Story 1 of 24. Graham Arnold's Iraq World Cup qualification and fan reception in Australia and Mexico. Graham Arnold's Iraq World Cup qualification and fan reception in Australia and Mexico. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Graham Arnold is the coach of Iraq's national football team who guided them to World Cup qualification in 2026. Iraq secured World Cup qualification with a 2-1 win over Bolivia in an interconfederation playoff on unspecified date, but referenced as recent. The match took place at Monterrey Stadium in Monterrey, Mexico. Iraq's goals were scored by Ali Al-Hamidi, 10th minute, and Ayman Hussein, second half winner. Bolivia's equalizer was scored by Moises Poniagua from a Ramiro Voca pass. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, SBS, does not mention the specific match details, goals, players, or the Bolivia match location, while ABC articles provide these specifics. No contradictions in factual claims between sources, all consensus facts align perfectly. This story was covered by ABC News and SBS News. Story 2 of 24. Film adaptation of Albert Camus L'Étranger by François Ozon and its cultural relevance. Film adaptation of Albert Camus L'Étranger by François Ozon and its cultural relevance. Here's what every outlet agrees on. François Ozon directed a 2024 film adaptation of Albert Camus L'Étranger, The Stranger, set in 1940s French Algeria. The film was released in UK cinemas on the 10th of April, 2024. The film is a monochrome adaptation filmed in Morocco. Benjamin Voisin stars as Musault, the protagonist from Camus' novel. The film includes a prologue featuring a newsreel-style propaganda film about Algiers' smooth blend of Occident and Orient. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states that existentialism is reaching its best-by date and long ago written off as sixth-form navel-gazing, while Article 2 does not dismiss existentialism's relevance outright. Article 1 describes Musault as hard-edged in his nonconformism and like a sociopathic, colonial-era Patrick Bateman, while Article 2 portrays him as the logical or illogical extension of the educated overclass without explicitly calling him sociopathic. Article 1 suggests that Ozon's film redeems Camus' story with moralizing overtones, while Article 2 argues that Ozon's changes soften the original text's brutal, heartless power and lose some of its meaning. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 3 of 24. Australia's response to US-Iran ceasefire and Trump's inflammatory rhetoric. Australia's response to US-Iran ceasefire and Trump's inflammatory rhetoric. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese welcomed a 2-week ceasefire between the US and Iran announced on the 28th of February, Australian time, that temporarily reopens the Strait of Hormuz. The ceasefire was agreed after a last-minute diplomatic intervention led by Pakistan. Iran's foreign minister stated the deal would temporarily allow safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran had de facto closed in retaliation for US and Israeli strikes on the 28th of February. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social on the 28th of February, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again." The ceasefire was announced less than 2 hours before Trump's self-imposed deadline for Iran to surrender or face widespread destruction. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Albanese avoided criticizing Trump's inflammatory language in the past week, while ABC describes this as a shift in Labour's language after initially refusing to pass judgment. The Guardian reports Albanese said it was a long step between Trump's tweet and the suggestion of war crimes, but ABC omits this nuance and focuses on Albanese's direct criticism of the language. The Guardian includes Trump's earlier expletive-laden demand, "Open the fucking strait," as context, but ABC does not mention this specific incident. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 4 of 24. Trump appoints JD Vance as fraud czar and targets Democratic states for alleged fraud crackdowns. Trump appoints JD Vance as fraud czar and targets Democratic states for alleged fraud crackdowns. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump announced JD Vance as the new fraud czar on April 2, 2024, via Truth Social post. 8 people were arrested in California on April 4, 2024, for allegedly committing over $50 million in Medicare healthcare fraud. The arrests were part of Operation Never Say Die, targeting sham hospice care facilities in Southern California. The accused included healthcare professionals like nurses and a psychologist who allegedly used non-terminal patients as Medicare beneficiaries. The U.S. Department of Justice stated the arrests were tied to sham hospice care facilities in Southern California. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims Trump's DOJ is crippling U.S. attorneys' offices in Minnesota, while Minnesota Governor Walz denies this and accuses Trump of shooting protesters and arresting children. Article 1 states Trump's administration is putting forward a budget proposal with record defense spending, but no second source confirms this detail. Article 1 reports Trump's DOJ halted $250 million in Medicaid funds to Minnesota, but no second source verifies the exact amount or timing beyond February 2024. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 5 of 24. 2 NSW teenagers arrested over alleged extremist material and terror probe in Moree. 2 NSW teenagers arrested over alleged extremist material and terror probe in Moree. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 teenagers, a 15-year-old boy and a 16-year-old boy, from Moree, NSW, were arrested in March 2024 over alleged extremist material. The investigation began in December 2023 after reports that a teenager accessed extremist material online. On the 27th of March, police raided a home in Moree and seized a mobile phone, a ballistic-style vest, and several notebooks from the 15-year-old. The 15-year-old was charged with using a carriage service to transmit violent extremist material and knowingly collecting or making a document connected with terrorism. The 16-year-old was charged with using a carriage service to possess violent extremist material. But not all outlets told the same story. Khao does not specify the exact date of the raids, while Guardian states they occurred on the 27th of March, 2024. Khao mentions the 15-year-old was arrested at 10 a.m. on the day of the raid, but Guardian does not provide a specific arrest time. Khao refers to the location as a small rural round, likely a typo for town, while Guardian correctly states Moree without ambiguity. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Story 6 of 24. Australia's teen social media ban effectiveness and unintended consequences. Australia's teen social media ban effectiveness and unintended consequences. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's social media ban for under-16s took effect in February 2024 after a 2-year trial period. Around 70% of children, approximately 2.1 million, remain on major platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat despite the ban. The eSafety Commissioner's report found no notable change in cyberbullying or image-based abuse reported by children post-ban. Facial age estimation technology has higher error rates for children near the 16-year age threshold, with many bypassing checks by being within 2 years of the limit. Over 5 million accounts have been deactivated since the ban's implementation, according to the Australian government. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the ban has been doomed to fail from the outset and ignores experts, while Article 2 frames the government's initial age assurance trial report as courageous despite later failures. Article 1 claims the ban creates new risks like privacy vulnerabilities, but Article 2 does not explicitly discuss this aspect beyond age verification inaccuracies. Article 1 emphasizes the ban's failure to address root problems like algorithmic harm, while Article 2 focuses more on enforcement gaps and legal challenges rather than systemic critiques. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 7 of 24. Review of JW Marriott Khao Resort and Spa in Thailand by 2 Australian news sources. Review of JW Marriott Khao Resort and Spa in Thailand by 2 Australian news sources. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The resort is named JW Marriott Khao Resort and Spa and located at 4112 Smoo 3 Kuk Kark, Takua Pa District, Phang Ngo, Thailand, 82220. The resort has 424 rooms and villas, with a recent redevelopment adding 127 rooms and villas. The resort features 6 distinct accommodation wings connected by extensive waterways. Deluxe rooms start at $253 per night. The resort offers 11 restaurants, bars, and dining experiences including olive, Italian, Thai, Thai, Sakura, Japanese, and Drift, Mediterranean and Middle Eastern. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 8 of 24. Rideshare driver charged with rape, stalking, coercive control over multiple victims in Brisbane. Rideshare driver charged with rape, stalking, coercive control over multiple victims in Brisbane. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 29-year-old male rideshare driver was charged with rape, coercive control, threatening violence, and 3 counts of stalking in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. The man allegedly used a white Mercedes-Benz A45 to pick up women on rideshare services in mid-2025 and November 2024. The first victim, a 27-year-old woman, was allegedly sexually assaulted on July 20, 2025, after the driver connected with her on social media following a rideshare ride in June 2025. The driver allegedly threatened the 27-year-old victim on August 17, 2025, at her home but left due to other people being present. A 21-year-old woman was allegedly contacted by the driver on November 1, 2024, after a rideshare ride, and received threatening messages over the next 7 days. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian mention the driver's address as Ferry Hills, Ferny Hills, but News Khao specifies Ferry Hills only. News Khao does not mention the driver's physical description, height, tattoos, build, while Guardian and ABC do. News Khao does not mention the driver being charged with trespass or misusing a telecommunications service, which Guardian and ABC include. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 9 of 24. 3 Australian basketball players selected in WNBA expansion draft for new teams. 3 Australian basketball players selected in WNBA expansion draft for new teams. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nyaju Puok was selected by the Portland Fire in the WNBA expansion draft as the 16th overall pick. Chloe Bibby was selected by the Portland Fire as the 11th overall pick in the expansion draft. Christy Wallace was selected by the Toronto Tempo as the 21st overall pick in the expansion draft. Sandy Brondello is coaching the Toronto Tempo and previously led the Australian Opals to Olympic bronze. The WNBA expansion draft occurred to form the 14th, Portland Fire, and 15th, Toronto Tempo, teams. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Portland selected Bridget Carlton with the first pick, but ABC does not mention this detail. The Guardian lists Julie Alamand as the first pick for Toronto Tempo, while ABC does not reference her selection. ABC specifies the WNBA draft for college overseas players is on April 13, but The Guardian does not mention this date. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 10 of 24. Australian drug trafficking syndicate arrested over alleged cocaine meth import via Bass Strait. Australian drug trafficking syndicate arrested over alleged cocaine meth import via Bass Strait. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 9 men aged between 31 and 72 were arrested in Victoria and Sydney over alleged drug smuggling plans. 8 arrests occurred in Victoria, Morwell, Glenroy, Cranbourne West, Cranbourne South, Greenvale, and 1 in Sydney, St Clair. The operation, named Operation Bruce Cremorne, involved Victoria Police, Australian Federal Police, and Australian Border Force, ABC, and AFP, Border Force, and ACIC, Guardian. The investigation began after a commercial trawler sank off Victoria's Port Albert in May 2023, raising suspicions about its crew's unusual behavior in rough weather. Police allege the syndicate attempted multiple times to rendezvous in Bass Strait with a mothership to receive up to 3.5 tons of cocaine. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the trawler sank in rough weather without commercial fishing equipment, while The Guardian does not specify weather conditions but focuses on unusual movements. ABC mentions only Victoria Police and AFP Border Force in the operation, while The Guardian includes the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, ACIC. ABC does not mention additional drug seizures, 30 kilograms meth in Perth or 41 kilograms cocaine in regional Victoria, linked to the syndicate, which The Guardian reports. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 11 of 24. Victoria Police manhunt and investigation into Desi Freeman's 7-month fugitive status after killing 2 officers. Victoria Police manhunt and investigation into Desi Freeman's 7-month fugitive status after killing 2 officers. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Desi Freeman was shot dead by Victoria Police Special Operations Group on Monday, April 1, 2026, after a 3-hour standoff at a property in Thollagolong, Victoria, near the NSW border. Freeman killed Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson, 59, and Senior Constable Vadim de Wart-Hottet, 35, on August 26, 2025, during a police raid on his Pawnpunker property over child sexual abuse allegations. Freeman was hiding in a modified shipping container with air ducts, camp chairs, an open box of beer, gas bottles, and cooking appliances at the Thollagolong property. 2 associates of Freeman, a man and a woman, were arrested at separate properties in northeast Victoria on Saturday, April 4, 2026, around 7 a.m., and will be interviewed by police. Freeman used a stolen Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol, taken from one of the officers he killed, during the standoff and was shot more than 20 times by police. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and The Age, first report, state the 2 associates were arrested and will be interviewed, but The Age, second report, claims they were released without charge pending further inquiries. SMH reports Freeman only recently moved to Thollagolong, perhaps 2 weeks prior, while The Age's photos suggest the hideout was established for an extended period, with camp chairs, beer, and cooking appliances. News Khao, first article, states Freeman's sovereign citizen ideology and prepper tendencies were key to his survival, but The Guardian does not mention these details. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 12 of 24. Legal and political battle over Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project. Legal and political battle over Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project involves demolishing the East Wing and building a 90,000 square foot facility. Federal Judge Richard Leon issued an injunction halting construction of the ballroom without congressional approval, suspended for 14 days. The National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, will vote on the project on Thursday, with its chair being Trump's former lawyer Will Schaaf. The National Trust for Historic Preservation filed a federal lawsuit in December 2024 to block the ballroom, arguing Trump violated preservation laws. The U.S. Commission of Fine Arts previously approved the ballroom project in December 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 2 states the Justice Department appealed Judge Leon's ruling on Tuesday, while Article 3 claims the appeal was filed on Friday. Article 1 mentions the NCPC postponed a vote last month due to public comments, but Articles 2 and 3 confirm the vote is scheduled for Thursday. Article 1 reports Trump's administration is appealing the decision, while Article 3 specifies the NPS, not the administration, filed the appeal motion. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 13 of 24. Arsenal's late win over Sporting CP in a Champions League group stage match. Arsenal's late win over Sporting CP in a Champions League group stage match. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kai Havertz scored a late winner in the first minute of injury time to secure Arsenal's 1-0 victory over Sporting CP. David Raya made multiple crucial saves, including a fingertip save against Maxi Araujo and 2 saves against Gini Catamo. Arsenal lost their last 2 matches before this game, a Carabao Cup final against Manchester City and an FA Cup match against Southampton. The match took place in Sporting CP's home stadium, with Arsenal needing to win to progress to the Champions League last 4. Mikel Arteta celebrated Havertz's goal by charging down the touchline with fists pumping. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Arsenal were missing 4 key players: Soccer, Ease, Timber, Hincapie, while Article 2 does not mention this detail. Article 1 describes Arsenal's first half as anxious and meek, while Article 2 does not provide a similar assessment of the first half's performance. Article 1 mentions Sporting CP were unbeaten in their past 23 league matches, but Article 2 states they were unbeaten in their past 23 league matches at home, no mention of away matches. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 14 of 24. Sha'Carri Richardson wins Storial Gift 120m handicap race from scratch in record time. Sha'Carri Richardson wins Storial Gift 120m handicap race from scratch in record time. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sha'Carri Richardson won the 2026 Storial Gift 120m handicap race in 13.15 seconds from scratch, Article 1, 3, 4, 6. Charlotte Nielsen finished second in 13.20 seconds, Article 3, and 13.19 seconds, Article 4, starting from 9 meters, Article 3, 4. Chiara Santiglia finished third in 13.36 seconds, Article 3. Richardson became the third woman to win the Storial Gift from scratch, Article 3, 4, 6. The Storial Gift took place in Western Victoria, 200 kilometers northwest of Melbourne, Article 3, 4. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 3 states Komalev won the men's final in 11.93 seconds, but Article 4 states he won in 12.03 seconds. Article 5 reports Richardson's heat time as 13.815 seconds, while Article 3 and 4 report her semi-final time as 13.52 seconds, no heat time provided. Article 3 mentions Richardson eased up in her semi-final and stood up at the line, but Article 2 only states she eased up without specifying the finish. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, SBS News, and The Age. Story 15 of 24. Sam Kerr's reported transfer from Chelsea to US NWSL club Denver Summit amid contract expiry speculation. Sam Kerr's reported transfer from Chelsea to US NWSL club Denver Summit amid contract expiry speculation. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sam Kerr is a 32-year-old Matildas captain and Chelsea striker who has played 6 seasons at the club since 2019. Kerr's contract with Chelsea expires at the end of the 2023-24 Women's Super League season. Network 10 reported Kerr has signed with US NWSL expansion club Denver Summit based in Colorado. Kerr scored 110 goals in 153 appearances for Chelsea, winning 5 WSL titles and 3 FA Cups. Kerr previously played in the NWSL with Western New York Flash, Sky Blue FC, and Chicago Red Stars before joining Chelsea. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Kerr's ACL injury return has seen her play reduced minutes under Sonia Bompasta, but ABC does not mention this context. The Guardian highlights Kerr's last chance at the Champions League title post-exit, while ABC omits this framing entirely. The Guardian specifies Kerr's ACL injury absence and slow return to fitness, which ABC does not address. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 16 of 24. DNA evidence confirms Ted Bundy's link to 1974 Utah murder of Laura and Aim. DNA evidence confirms Ted Bundy's link to 1974 Utah murder of Laura and Aim. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Laura and Aim, 17, went missing on Halloween night, October 31, 1974, after leaving a party alone to go to a convenience store in Utah. Her body was found about a month later, November-December 1974, on the side of a highway in American Fork Canyon, bound, beaten, and without clothing. Investigators long suspected Ted Bundy was responsible, as he verbally acknowledged culpability leading up to his 1989 execution. Bundy was studying law at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City at the time of Aim's killing, 1974. New DNA testing in 2023 to 2024 definitively linked Bundy's DNA to evidence from Aim's case. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not specify the body was found in American Fork Canyon, while ABC explicitly states this. ABC claims Aim was likely kept alive for several days post-abduction, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. ABC provides a detailed timeline of Bundy's 1977 escape from Aspen Courthouse, while The Guardian omits this. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 17 of 24. US imposes 100% tariff on imported patented pharmaceuticals, impacting Australian exporters like CSL. US imposes 100% tariff on imported patented pharmaceuticals, impacting Australian exporters like CSL. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 100% tariff on patented drugs manufactured outside the US on date, Thursday afternoon, Washington time. Australia exported approximately 1.3 to 1.91 billion US dollars worth of pharmaceuticals to the US in 2023 to 2025, with CSL, Melbourne-based, accounting for the bulk of these exports. CSL has US manufacturing plants in Illinois and North Carolina, with a 1.5 to 2.2 billion US dollars expansion underway in Kankakee, Illinois, set to complete by 2029 to 2031. The tariff applies to patented drugs but not generic medicines, and is enacted under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, not covered by the Supreme Court's February ruling on Liberation Day tariffs. Companies moving production to the US can reduce tariffs to 20%, and to zero if they secure most favored nation drug pricing status for the US. But not all outlets told the same story. Thij and ABC both state CSL's US expansion is 1.5 billion US dollars, but Newscomer reports it as 2.2 billion US dollars. ABC claims Trump previously said the tariff could be as high as 200%, but Thij and Guardian do not mention this specific figure. Thij and ABC both say the tariff applies to patented drugs but not generics, but Newscomer does not explicitly state this distinction. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 18 of 24. Impact of RBA surcharge ban on Qantas points earnings and alternatives for frequent flyers. Impact of RBA surcharge ban on Qantas points earnings and alternatives for frequent flyers. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Debit and credit surcharges were banned in Australia on October 1, 2023, removing merchant surcharges at checkout. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, slashed interchange fees for credit cards by 63%, from 0.8% to 0.3%. Qantas frequent flyer program covers approximately 50% of the Australian population. The RBA's 2017 interchange fee reduction led to reduced points earn rates, some by up to a half, and capped sign-up bonuses. Qantas Health Insurance offers a sign-up bonus of 140,000 Qantas points for new customers joining by April 9. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 19 of 24. NSW fuel price enforcement and consumer reporting crackdown amid fuel crisis. NSW fuel price enforcement and consumer reporting crackdown amid fuel crisis. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW Fair Trading issued 93 penalty notices to service stations for price mismatches between Bowser and fuel check listings. About 75% of NSW service stations, 1,800 out of 2,400, were inspected in April as part of a compliance blitz. Penalties include on-the-spot fines of $1,100, with maximum court penalties of $22,000 for individuals and $110,000 for corporations. Fuel check daily users surged from 10,000 to 500,000 by late March due to fuel price concerns. NSW government injected $2.2 million into fuel check to improve data collection and transparency. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News.com.au mention 24 fines based on consumer reports, but The Guardian does not specify this detail. The Guardian states fuel prices dropped by up to 32 cents per litre after excise and GST cuts, while ABC and News.com.au only mention 26.3 plus 5.7 cents. The Guardian reports WA increased penalties to $4,000 for non-compliance, but ABC and News.com.au do not mention this change. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and News.com.au. Story 20 of 24. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Federal Judge Lewis Lyman dismissed 10 of Blake Lively's 13 claims against Justin Baldoni in a ruling on the 18th of April, 2024. The surviving claims are breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation, with a trial scheduled for the 18th of May, 2024. Judge Lyman ruled Lively was an independent contractor, not an employee, and thus could not bring sexual harassment claims under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Lively alleged Baldoni kissed her forehead, rubbed his face against her neck, put his thumb to her mouth, and said it smells good during filming of It Ends With Us. Baldoni's lawyers described the defendants as very good people who did not engage in sexual harassment as alleged. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Lively's texts to Taylor Swift included "I'll do anything for you" in response to Baldoni being called a doofus, not mentioned in ABC. ABC details Baldoni's alleged comment "pretty hot" and his sexual harassment training joke, which is not referenced in The Guardian's articles. The Guardian states Lively's lawyers claimed Baldoni kissed, nuzzled, and touched her without consent, while ABC focuses on specific incidents like the birth scene and bra comment. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 21 of 24. Affordable flight options to Europe in 2026 amid Middle East instability. Affordable flight options to Europe in 2026 amid Middle East instability. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A business-class return flight from Melbourne to London with Etihad in mid-April to early May costs $4,881, nearly $2,000 cheaper than Emirates Premium Economy for the same route and dates. Economy class fares to Europe via Asia-based carriers, e.g., Air China, Malaysia Airlines, Qantas, Turkish Airlines, are comparable to 2025 prices, with examples like Melbourne-London from $1,295, Air China, or Sydney-Paris from $2,167, Malaysia Airlines. Return business class fares with Qantas, Singapore Airlines, Japan Airlines, ANA, or Turkish Airlines start at $12,000 for any departure in the next 6 months. China-based carriers and Vietnam Airlines offer sub-$10,000 return business class fares to Europe. Flights via the US, e.g., American Airlines, United, are safer but more expensive, with return economy fares from Melbourne-Sydney to London starting at $2,600 in May and $4,000 in July. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources, as Thege is a direct replication of SMH's article with no deviations. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 22 of 24. Court rejects suppression order on Bondi gunmen's family identities. Court rejects suppression order on Bondi gunmen's family identities. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Naved Akram is charged with 15 counts of murder, 40+ counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of committing a terrorist act related to the Bondi attack. Akram's father, Sajid Akram, 50, was shot dead by police during the December 14 shooting at the Chinooka by the Sea event in Bondi Beach. A photograph of Naved Akram's driver's license, including his address, was posted on social media shortly after the December 14 attack. Judge Hugh Donnelly dismissed a 40-year suppression order request for Akram's mother, brother, and sister's identities and addresses on March 21, 2024. Media outlets including ABC, 9, News Corp Australia, and Guardian Australia opposed the suppression order. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Khao described the yellow liquid thrown at the family's yard as suspected to be urine, but The Guardian omits this detail entirely. News Khao states Akram's license photo was posted on the night of the shooting, while ABC specifies it was posted shortly after, a minor temporal distinction. The Guardian does not mention the family's home being targeted with pork chops or explicit threats via phone messages, only vandalized. ABC and News Khao provide specifics. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 23 of 24. Westpac CEO Anthony Miller warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical tensions. Westpac CEO Anthony Miller warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical tensions. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Miller, CEO of Westpac, warned in interviews with ABC's That's Business podcast that Australia faces a chance of a recession due to inflationary pressures and geopolitical tensions. ABC, News Khao. Inflation in Australia rose 3.7% in February 2026, down 0.1% from January, but remains above the Reserve Bank of Australia's, RBA, target band of 2 to 3%, ABC. The RBA has raised interest rates twice in 2026, most recently to 4.1%, from 3.85%, in March 2026, News Khao. Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis forecast 3 more RBA rate hikes by August 2026, ABC. The median house price in Australia is $933,137, far exceeding the $600,000 to $650,000 range affordable on a median income of $90,000 to $95,000, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Westpac's fixed rates were raised by 0.45 percentage points in March 2026, but News Khao does not mention this specific rate adjustment detail. ABC cites Commonwealth Treasury analysts warning inflation could top 5%, while News Khao focuses on Oxford Economics oil price projections without mentioning Treasury's specific forecast. ABC attributes the median house price figure, $933,137, to a specific source, Domain, but News Khao does not reference or repeat this data point. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 24 of 24. Severe tropical cyclone Mela threatening Australia's far north Queensland coast after cyclone Narelle. Severe tropical cyclone Mela threatening Australia's far north Queensland coast after cyclone Narelle. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Severe tropical cyclone Mela is expected to make landfall in far north Queensland, likely around Cape York Peninsula, between Sunday and early next week, April 5 to 6 to April 12. Mela is currently a Category 3 storm as of April 7, with sustained winds of 130 to 150 km per hour and gusts up to 185 to 205 km per hour, located in the Solomon Sea, 970, 980 km east of Port Moresby. Mela could intensify to a Category 4 storm before landfall, with sustained winds of 160 to 199 km per hour, but is expected to weaken after crossing the coast. Cyclone Narelle made landfall in Cape York on March 20 as a Category 4 storm and later impacted the Northern Territory and Western Australia, the first such multi-state landfall in over 20 years. The Australian cyclone season runs from November to April, and this season has seen 10 tropical cyclones form, with 6 reaching Category 3 or higher, above the average of 3 to 4 landfalls per season. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, Guardian, states Mela is a Category 5 storm over the Solomon Sea, while Articles 2, 3, 4, and 5, Guardian ABC, classify it as Category 3 as of April 7. Article 2, Guardian, warns Mela could miss the coast entirely or hit populated areas like Cairns Townsville, while Articles 1 and 4, Guardian ABC, focus narrowly on Cape York as the most likely landing zone. Article 3, news.com.au, reports Mela as the 11th named storm this season, but Articles 1 and 5, Guardian ABC, state there have been 10 tropical cyclones, with Mela being the 11th potential. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au.